so much America.
That's right. It's Independence Day. I get points for that. Red, white, and blue.
You get points deducted for caring that much. Just kidding.
I just wanted to wear this for that. So, you're the veteran here.
Yes, I am.
All right. So, I guess we could get started here. I just I remember in the morning I'm always in the gym, so it's 3 hours ahead for you. So what I wanted to do is I just scribbled some stuff down. So I'll go ahead with a opening statement. So thanks everybody, whoever is watching on this holiday or holy day for some, I guess. Not for me, but it is Independence Day, 4th of July. And so what we're going to talk about here comes from a long, I guess they say no debates on Facebook. Is that correct?
Yeah,
according to QO policy.
No, it's according to Joel Demos.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good policy because, I mean, that was like 75 responses or something. But we did get we got a great debate between Joel and Angelos. So I guess they debated last night. I apologize to Angelos for keeping you up late, tagging you, but I thought it was a good debate they had there. So if you guys want to have it to watch another debate on evolution versus, I guess he was mainly, Angelos was defending the young Earth, which I subscribe to. And so what we're going to do here today is we are not going to discuss the validity of evolution or creationism itself. So for those things, you can get a lot of debates. What we're going to talk about here is I make the claim that the theory of evolution as described in modern mainstream science, which is macroevolution, is wholly incompatible with Christianity. When people say evolution, they are almost universally talking about macroevolution, even though often when they go to talk about it, they describe microevolution. So we don't quibble with any like microevolution. That's clearly observable. North Koreans are shorter than South Koreans. You could consider that part of microevolution. So that's not an issue here. What we're talking about is specifically macroevolution. And so again, not over the other one, not over evolution versus creationism, but the compatibility. And I claim that evolution and Christianity, that they are completely and wholly incompatible as described by the evolutionists. So again, stick to this. If you want another debates, like I said, you can watch that. There's a lot of debates on YouTube. I like the Fernandez. Turek has some great ones. I've also debated in previous ones on the existence of truth and morality, which actually we can get into a little bit here. And I was going to say, for this debate, I actually went to, if you're familiar with Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York City, with famous pastor. He's written several books. He's known quite well. He speaks around the world. Tim Keller. Are you familiar with him at all?
No.
Okay, well, anyways. So there are some out there who in the I guess under the arch of Christianity do not quibble, or I guess they don't necessarily believe in, first of all, the young Earth, or they tend to even subscribe to evolution. So there are people out there, but I'm just saying that it's not compatible with the gospel. It's wholly incompatible with the gospel. And so anyways, I went to a presentation, a little kind of talk that they have these, I forget the name of them, but this is years and years ago. So they have these talks where they have a speaker, and he, like in a classroom, and he talks about different topics. And they had a scientist, and he talked about evolution. And I was raising my hand every minute or two and pointing out fallacies. What I saw as fallacies, anyways. But he was talking, and I think much of what he mentioned in that presentation was distortions or blatant falsehoods about what the Bible says versus reality. One thing he brought up was the separation of the waters. right? Genesis talks about the waters above and the waters below, and he said, "Oh, we've gone into space, and that doesn't exist anymore. That therefore proves Genesis is false." I said, "Well, no, because it says that that separation collapsed. Yeah, the waters above collapsed, and it rained for the first time, and all that." So I think there's just a lot of ignorance in the view of what the Bible says. So you want me to get into the actual discrepancies, or did you want to do like a little opening statement?
I guess I could do an opening statement real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a statistic out that says over 50% of evangelicals, pastors, think that the world is less than 10,000 years old. What we know is that there's half of the ministers really believe that the universe is only around 10,000 years old. This is just scientifically nonsense. And yet this is held by a near majority of pastors in the United States. And it's just the most ridiculous claim that you could make. So a lot of the statements that I'm going to be making come from William Lane Craig, who has some very similar ideas to what you're stating, right? But he does agree that evolution does exist, and he gives a very strong canonical representation of evolution, right? So the point here is that you have to prove through.
Well, I want to provide evidence for it. I don't like the idea I have to prove something, but I hate to interrupt. Sorry, but again, we're just talking about which side is more believable, or which side is able to provide more evidence for. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Right, but the term is still the same. It's still prove beyond a reasonable doubt, I guess you could say, that your side is true. But you cannot do this without eliciting the Bible. So my main objection here is less about what you say, because you've already made kind of a mistake with the statement that Koreans are shorter, and that's microevolution, not macroevolution. That's actually false. That's macroevolution. You just admitted to macroevolution. So despite
No.
yes, that's what macroevolution is.
No, they are still, well, first of all, they're still Koreans, but mainly they're still humans. Right. Macroevolution is changing species. Microevolution is very small changes within humans.
No,
so
that's not.
Yes, it is.
Okay, microevolution happens on a small scale within a single population, while macroevolution happens on a scale that transcends the boundaries of a single species, right?
Yeah, so we're talking about us transcending a species, but they're still Koreans, they're still humans. They still speak the same language. They have changes in the language, they have changes in their structure, but you wouldn't be able to. I mean, North Korea and South Korea, they're still Koreans. They still speak Korean. And primarily they're still humans. So what I'm talking about when we talk about evolution, people are talking about the Darwinian evolution, which is changes going from what would be described as a primordial soup, yada yada. 4 billion years later, you have humans, and that's what they talked about in the debate last night. Is nobody disputes microevolution. It's the idea of macroevolution. Do humans come from apes? I mean, we can go like the relatively simple approach. Just the last how many 10,000, 20,000 years is the idea that we went from apes to humans, right? Would you subscribe to that belief?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where we're getting, right? We're talking about the macroevolution from one species, which is chimpanzees, apes, to another species which is humans.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about small microevolution changes within a species, it tends to be just a loss of information, as he described last night. Or as Turek describes also, that these diseases evolve, but they don't. A flu virus doesn't evolve and become a completely different virus. It's just different strains of the flu virus, right? And it becomes from losses of information.
I can't speak for what other people said, but that's not how the flu virus works either, nor. So whenever a virus goes from host to host, it changes, right? So the virus that you get versus the virus I get changes because the ribonucleic acid, the RNA, has to substitute itself to fit in with the DNA. Therefore, it's not attacked by the T cells rampantly and just destroyed outright. So that's one statement. But secondly, like when you've got like Spanish flu, bird flu, and things of this nature, like so sure, there's the overarching genus of flu, influenza, but those changes are far greater between Spanish flu and bird flu than there is the similarities between the two as they go up to the influenza genus, right?
No, I mean they're still the flu virus, right? I mean they're not classified as the Spanish disease. It's Spanish flu, and it's a very specific strain of the flu virus. It's not a cold now, right?
But it's more different than it is the same. Therefore, it could be classified different, but its overarching antecedent is the flu. So it's not.
It's still of this flu species, you could say.
It doesn't work like that on that scale. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. You could say, right? I'm not saying that it's like a flu species, but I'm saying it is still the flu, a strain of the flu.
All right. And I also want to state that nothing in what I'm going to state has anything to do with Darwinian evolution. So again, they stated that's what Darwinian evolution is. That's not what Darwinian evolution means, right? So Darwinian evolution is the fact that for things to change, there has to be competition and action towards resources. So that's what Darwinian evolution is. Evolution without Darwinianism does exist. So there's plenty of systems that we know of that there are groups of cells and even so much as humans are considered to be possibly non-Darwinian evolution, right? So we've never, when we came into being, which there's still a lot of misunderstanding about when we came into being, but we didn't necessarily have this straight attack for resources that others did.
I think we're getting a little too much into the debate on evolution itself. But I would say nobody believes in Darwinian evolution, the simple cell, things like that. I mean, it's so much more complicated today than it was in his day, 150, what was he, 1836 or something? He wrote his book.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it was a long time ago, before really the powerful microscopes and stuff we have today. So it's vastly more complicated than it was. I mean, he studied finches on the island, and he really had almost immeasurable changes in beaks thickness and things. So, but whatever. So you will say that you believe man comes from chimps, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just stick to that. Like, does that sound okay?
Sure.
So you say man came from chimps and yada yada going back 4 billion years. I say man. I say Genesis. I'll go ahead and let you finish. Sorry.
I mean,
I just want to clarify that.
Okay, so my first statement, I guess you could say, is that I do not believe that. So if young earth creationists are going to take the Bible as a literal statement, they don't take the Bible as a literal statement all around, right? And that young earthers will not embrace the view that there was plant life and life on earth prior to God's creation of the sun. Rather, the creation of the sun on the fourth day is interpreted to mean something like the sun appeared on that day, that it came out from behind a thick cloud canopy that had been enveloping the earth. Do you agree to that?
Well, you mean the light appearing before?
On the fourth day, God created the sun.
Yeah, so I actually have it here if you want. Would you like to read it? What is that? Genesis 1. The fourth day, and God said, "Let there be light in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from night." And so you talked about reading things literally in the scripture, right? There are things in the Bible that are to be read, like the Bible itself is to be read literally as it says, but there are things in there that are clearly plays on words. Jesus says, "I am the door." It doesn't mean he's like made of wood, right? There are sayings. It says the sun rises in the east, right? Do you know what time sunrise was this morning?
No, I don't.
It's like 5 o'clock, right? But you would say somewhere around 5 a.m., right?
Sure.
Okay, then could I say, okay, you're a scientific buffoon because you think the sun rises in the east? I'm just kidding. but as I know, that's clearly ridiculous. The Earth rotates, right? And it appears as if the sun is rising in the east, but the reality is the Earth is rotating, the sun is there, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like the Bible says, "Oh, the sun rises in the east." Oh, see, the Bible is poor, doesn't know anything about science or about how the world works, right? It's saying these are things that humans, we just say, right? The four foundations of the earth. It doesn't mean the earth is sitting on concrete pillars or something ridiculous, but rather you could say God is holding things together. The sustaining of the universe and the earth and the planets is being held together by the forces of nature that God has created. Where do these come from? That's something else. But I'll say, I'll just read Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now, does that mean God created the sun there? Not necessarily, right? Because we know in heaven, Jesus is the light, right? So different interpretations of what that means. But that doesn't mean that people say, okay, the first day, no, this is just some meaningless term. That's just poetry from ignorant pre-science individuals, right? I mean, that's what some people will say, is that Moses didn't know anything about science. He just tried to describe things as he thought.
Okay.
So I don't know I don't know what your personal interpretation of Genesis is, but
That it's a,
I should say the creation account.
it's a descriptive account, but it's not prescriptive. Like, so Genesis 1 through 3 are intended to be historical at like some level, right? So Adam and Eve are presented as the first human couple, right? I think you agree to that, and that they're the origins of the human race. They are treated as historic individuals who actually lived. They're not just symbols of mankind. They're actually people who are connected to other people in Genesis, like Abraham and his descendants, by genealogies that linked Adam and Eve to indisputable historical persons. It's clear that Adam and Eve are not symbolic figures in this narrative. And the author does think of them as real historical persons who have descendants that eventually lead Abraham and the people of Israel. On the
And
other
Jesus himself is linked back to Adam and Eve, right?
But on the other hand, the Genesis narrative is also undoubtedly meant to be symbolic and metaphorical in certain respects. For example, the name Adam in Hebrew just means man. In the beginning, God created man, and Eve means mother of all living, right? So,
A woman means out of man, yeah.
no, Eve,
Yeah,
mother of all.
yeah, but I'm saying man and woman. But yes, Eve, yeah.
Yeah. So Adam and Eve are not just historical individuals like Janice and Jim. This is a man and the mother of all living human beings. They represent humanity before God. They are symbolic. And I think they're metaphorical for humanity. They're not like a legitimate statement that we all come from Adam and Eve. There's actually even discrepancies within the Bible that talk about it later after Cain killed Abel and moved to a city where there were other people, right? So,
well, yes. So it doesn't say that. It says Adam and Eve, they had their first son, Abel, right? And then Cain killed Abel. Or was it Cain was their first son? But it says, and then they had Seth. But it says later on they had many, many other children, right? It doesn't say that they only had these two children and they had no one else. And it doesn't give you a specific timeline of how many years it was between when they left the garden or when they were thrown out of the garden and when they had their sons and when their sons killed each other, right? I mean, were they 21 years old when they did it? I don't know. Doesn't say that, right? So we say Adam and Eve had many children, and they no doubt spread out in that area of the earth. And so it could have been 600 years later or something like that. There's no real way to know. They had Seth after him. They called him the new man. I mean, you really get into what these names mean. Adam had Seth. forget the Hebrew interpretation of the names is pretty amazing in and of itself.
I just gave you Adam and Eve's Hebrew interpretation.
Yeah, but no, I'm saying Adam, Seth, Seth's son, and you go all the way up. What is it, man? It is the gospel, right? The interpretation of the first 20 people. That is it listed in the Bible. I mean, Adam begat Seth, begat, ...
Right.
Man. I forget what the interpretation means, but it is the gospel right there.
Right, but so you're saying that there's an absence of this statement, but there's this huge genealogy and chronology off to the next side, right? Like that makes no sense.
Yeah, but it's saying Jesus comes from Adam, right? And it's not going to go, Adam had 375 brothers, or I mean, Seth had 375 brothers or something like that, right?
No, because that doesn't make sense because the Old Testament doesn't refer to Jesus in any form or fashion.
Well, actually, it does many times. There's Christophanies, and there's all sorts of angel of the Lord.
It does not
worship. Do angels accept worship? Who accepts worship?
That doesn't matter. Stop trying to get off topic. Jesus Christ as a person is not referenced in the Old Testament. That's a useless claim. So it does not give
he actually is, but I don't want to get into that, but he is. So
no.
Well, look, I'll say he is. You can say no, but what is the point of the Old Testament if it's not? Okay. Anyways, we are getting a little off topic here.
Okay, so let's go into another one. In the creation story, as it continues through Genesis 2, we have clearly a metaphorical, perhaps an anthropomorphic descriptions of God, right? God's depicted in like human terms. For example, he's walking in the garden, looking for Adam and Eve, asks, "Where are you?" as he's looking for them, right? And which is such a strange point that doesn't necessarily happen everywhere in the Bible. So this is really the only time that this happens, right?
Well, let me explain that. Adam and Eve were perfect, right? They were without sin.
That's not perfection, but sure.
Yeah, they are. It is. They are perfect in every way, without sin. God created man, and when he finished, he said that it was good, and he finished. Right? He finished creating. He created man. He said, "I am done creating." He did one more creation, which is but his creators ex nihilo, out of nothing, was finished with Adam. Then he took he put Adam in his sleep. He took his rib. He created Eve out of the rib. Right? But that's not the same as he created Adam from the dust of the earth. But he created everything else. He created ex nihilo out of nothing, right?
Right. And
he created them perfect, and God cannot be associated with sin. So once they sinned, he can no longer speak to you. Moses said, "Let me see you." He said, "If you see me, you will die. So I'll just walk by you, put you in a cleft of the rock. I'll walk by you, and you can see my glory from my hind parts." And so basically, and then remember, Moses was glowing. But
you're missing the point, right? So even if God could walk up and talk to us, he wouldn't be like, "Where are you?"
Well, that's not a literal question. He's asking Adam, "Hey, where are you?" He's not. It's kind of like when he says,
"No."
He asks questions throughout the Bible.
No, he's an omniscient, omnipresent, all-powerful, personal being. He would just go beside Adam, and there's no.
Well, that's not the point of what he's doing, though.
But because the point
that's not his purpose of asking Adam. He later on he asks questions of man all the time, right? I mean, there's other points in the Bible where he asks Cain, "What have you done? Where's your brother?" Does that mean, God doesn't really know anything?
No,
he's not omniscient, clearly, because he's asking Cain, "Where's your brother?" He knows where his brother is. He wants Cain to tell him, though. He wants Adam to tell him because he knows what Adam and Eve have done, right?
But that's not the same. That's not the same instance, right?
It's not the same instance, but it's the same idea.
No, it's not, because you just said that before that he had made Adam good. He had made Adam perfect. Therefore, there's no reason for Adam to have lied or hid himself in any manner. So it's just
he had sinned. He'd eaten from the fruit. He ate the fruit of the tree of life. Right?
He spoke to him before that.
Expressly forbidden from doing that. No, that's when he asked him, "Where are you?" He walked in the garden with him many times, but this time he's saying, "Hey, where are you? Why are you hiding?" Right? And he tells him, "Well, we ate from the tree." And so that's when he has to kick him out. Because God knew he had sinned. Now, people, why is there sin in the world? That's a whole nother idea. But God gave him free will, right? God gave humans free will. Do Do you believe that? Free will? I
Yeah,
don't know.
I
Okay, so
agree
we
with you
say,
as well.
yeah, so we say God gave man free will. Why did he do that? Well, he didn't want robots. He wanted someone to freely choose to love him back, right? Because, I mean, if your daughter, you just say, if you were able to make her obey you in every way and love you at all times, that really wouldn't be very fun, right? You got a little robot.
Right, but again, let's stick back to the
So,
point because there's nothing to do with it. So
well, it is to do with your question, though,
no,
right? Your comments on it.
no, it doesn't at all. So let's talk about God creating man, right? So he fashions him out of the dust of the earth and breathes into his nostrils the breath of life, right? So this, I don't think you're going to state that this is intended to mean that God literally bent down and performed CPR on Adam through his nose. Or would you agree that this is a literary metaphorical device?
Well, it doesn't say
Describing-
CPR. It says it breathed life into him.
I know.
So, yeah, God created him out of the dust of the earth. Yeah.
I understand that it's not CPR. I'm giving a visual statement, right? So you're stating that it is a literary and a metaphorical device describing the creation of humanity, right? That he didn't, or are you saying that God formed himself into man, walking in Eden, walked up, picked up some dust, molded it to look like, Adam, and said, "You are human," right?
Well, I think that's a very simplistic way to look at it, but somewhat. I mean, you see, God is seen in the Old Testament after the Eden, and that's why I mentioned the Christophanies. But that's Jesus appearing in the Old Testament, right? So Colossians 1:15, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature? For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things exist. All things consist, right? So on and on.
Right. Okay. So back to my point that I'm driving home, right? So let's look at Genesis 1, right, as the whole narrative, right? The whole statement of Genesis, right? So it's an incredibly carefully crafted piece of Hebrew literature, right? It's really unique. There's nothing like this in Hebrew literature elsewhere, including the Bible. And scholars tend to
Well, it's in the Bible,
right,
but yeah.
right. But it's different than the rest of the Bible, right? It's written differently. And scholars tend to agree that it's not poetry, so it's not like a Hebrew poem, and it's not exactly a hymn. So, but it does seem to have strophes or verses, and it's not as straightforward prose as the other ones, right? And so, let's look at some things. This chapter is highly stylized piece of writing that is constructed with certain parallels running all through it. For example, and God said, and God made, and it was so. You find the structure repeated over and over again through this chapter. It is a very carefully, stylistically constructed passage that exhibits an enormous amount of literary polish. And the fact that it exhibits the same latitude of the English word day, right? So we always talk about day. It can be used to describe a 24-hour period of time, but it can be used more broadly as well as the word era. Like when we say in Lincoln's day,
Yeah.
there were no automobiles yet. Obviously, you're not referring to a 24-hour period. Yam in Hebrew exhibits the exact same sort of latitude, right? And so
Right.
there's the very first phrase in Genesis 1, and the very phrase that is used in Genesis 1 for the first day, Yom Ehad, or day one, is also used elsewhere in the scripture in a non-literal sense. So there's not a literal statement for a 24-hour period, right? So let's
Wrong.
Okay.
So I'd say it right here. I've got it right here. So I was waiting for you to say that. Yom. I know they say it means era. It could be 1,000 years. Could be a day. Could be, but in the context, it's a day. Because in Exodus 20, and God spake all these words, saying, "I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of Egypt," etc. And these are the 10 Commandments, right?
Yeah.
So I skipped down to Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, maidservant, cattle, etc. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And then he goes on to the
Right.
other ones, right?
So
So it's the same idea, and he's referring back to Genesis. I made it in 6 days. God, labored, we say, labored in 6 days, and then on the
right,
seventh day he rested. Well, it's just he created for 6 days, and then he rested on the seventh day. And you should do likewise. You work 6 days like God did. Now he's not saying work 6,000 years and then you'll rest in the end, but he's saying in 6 literal days he created the earth and all that's in it, and on the seventh day he rested from creation.
right.
And you
So
should also have a seventh day, and we get our week from that, right?
right. So here we go. So here's another time that it's used. So, for example, the phrase in Zechariah 14:7 refer to the day of the Lord, right? Zechariah refers to the day of the Lord. That is to say, God's judgment upon Israel is clearly not to mean like just a 24-hour period of time. So the language in Genesis 1 should not be pressed to indicate a literal 24 hours, right? And so you talked about Exodus 29 through 11, right? But I think that the interpretation may be pressing the passage in Exodus a little hard. What the Exodus passage is talking about clearly is the pattern that is set down in Genesis, namely the pattern of God's laboring for 6 days creating the world and resting on the seventh day. The pattern is the same that Israel should observe in its literal work week. Israel should work for 6 literal days and then rest on the seventh. That doesn't mean to say that because this pattern is the same, that therefore the periods of time or the days described in Genesis 1 are therefore the exactly same length as an ordinary calendar day. Look at how the Sabbath commandment is repeated in Exodus 31:12 through 17. Right? Notice that in this passage it refers to the seventh day as God's Sabbath day as God's Sabbath rest. It says, on the seventh day, God ceased from labor and was refreshed by this day. But when you read Genesis 1, the seventh day is clearly not a 24-hour period of it. Unlike the other days, does not come to an end with an evening and a morning, right? So the seventh day doesn't actually have an end that's stated directly, right? And so God is still in the day of his Sabbath rest right now because God is still no longer being active in creating new things.
Okay, well, we're kind of getting into the idea of the 6 days of creation. I want to talk specifically about the gospel and Christianity, but I will say John 1:1, right? So if you read John, you'll see John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him. Without him was nothing made that was made, except, and I'll go down to John 14, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So this is referring to Jesus, Jesus creating everything, God creating everything, the Trinity, and coming down to earth as Jesus. Now, the main contention between evolution and Christianity is why does God care about man? Why is man special? So we look at Paul confirms the first man, Jesus confirms the first man in creation in the New Testament. Jesus came down. What is man special? Psalms, David asks, why is man so special that you look at him? Well, it goes back to Genesis. God created man in his own image and made him special. He set him apart from the rest of the creatures, and he gave him dominion over the earth and all that is in it, right? Matthew 6:26, Jesus says, if even a sparrow, where'd it go? I had it right here. Matthew 6:26, behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. And are ye not much better than them? Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit unto his stature, and why, etc. But he's saying that man is special. Why is man special? In evolution, there's nothing special about man except in man's own head. So why did God come and save man? Why didn't he come and save the dogs and the cats and the other creatures? At what point and is man morally responsible for anything? At what point did man become morally responsible?
What? Okay, so you're stating that because there's evolution, God couldn't care about man. Is that what you're stating?
I'm saying yes. Evolution means man is not special in any way.
Well, that's just stupid.
Okay, but I'm saying it's stupid to think that man is special under an evolutionary process. Man, can you prove to me man is the highest order? No, you can't. You just think that.
What? What do you mean? What the hell?
That man is the highest ordered creature. Man is what? Prove to me man is special.
We observably are better. We create buildings.
Okay, that's in your own head. But prove to me objectively that man is special.
How is that not an objective fact that we build buildings and fly to the moon?
Why does that matter? I mean, who cares? What does that make us special?
What do you? What kind?
We're more intelligent. Where does intelligence come from? Where does reason come from? Prove to me reason without the use of reason. The worldview of creation.
Stop. You're talking in circles. You're not talking about the fucking.
I'm not talking in circles. I'm asking you questions that are adamant. They're directly related to this topic. Yes, so man is not special under the evolutionary process. Evolutionists will tell you themselves. They think, yes, man's special, but if man evolved from nothing, then they're...
No, I don't care what evolutionists say. This is not a debate on evolutionists. This is a debate on whether Christianity, the theory of evolution, is against Christianity, right? And so far, you haven't explained yourself dutifully with the young earth creationism. And second,
that's what I said in the beginning, is I don't care about, for this specific debate, I don't care about young versus old earth. I mean, we could even say that, fine, it's 4 billion years old. Doesn't matter. Say God created man 6,000 approximately years ago, right? That's what we're talking about. Man was created 6,000 or so years ago.
Right. But that doesn't make sense if we agree that the earth is 4 billion years old and we have evidence of humans 195,000.
But we don't. We do. Well, I don't want to get into that again. I want you to tell me why man is special, why God cares about man vastly more than any other creature.
Because he created man.
But he didn't. You just told me he didn't create man. Man evolved from nothing. Man evolved from apes.
So you're telling me that we cannot agree with evolution because God cannot use mechanisms of genetic mutation and natural selection to produce biological complexity on this planet.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the gospel, no, I'm saying God can do whatever he wants, but I'm saying the gospel says Jesus became a man so that he could save mankind, right? Jesus was born of a virgin.
Right.
So you agree, born of a virgin, right?
Yeah.
So not of the male seed, because in Genesis it talks about sins passing through the male seed. So he was perfect in every way. He never sinned, born of a virgin, was tried under Pontius Pilate, died on the cross, rose again on the third day, so that man may live for eternity, right?
Nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Why does he care about mankind? If man is nothing special, if man is just the evolutionary process coming from apes, why is man different than apes? Why didn't he save apes?
Because he has a special bond to humans.
Why? Doesn't make any sense from an evolutionary process.
What are you talking about?
I'm asking you why God cares about man.
I've answered that.
But you didn't. Man is just an evolutionary process.
So you're telling me that God cannot create man through an evolutionary process?
I didn't say that. I said, but God creates apes the same way according to your evolutionary process, right?
He did.
Yes.
No, he didn't. Obviously, we're different. There's an obvious indicator of difference. There's an obvious indicator.
They're different, but why is man special? Why is man special?
God created man to be different through evolution.
Okay, so you're just saying God created man. That's what I'm saying. God created man different. God created man in his own image. What makes man special? Why can't I kill you, but I can kill an ape?
Well, I don't think that.
Why is an ape not morally responsible for killing another ape, but I'm morally responsible for killing another human?
Right, because for one, we know what morality is. Animals do not have morality, and animals do not feel pain. Okay, they don't feel pain. It's a reaction.
Yeah, they do. Oh, they do. They absolutely feel pain.
No, they don't. It's a reaction.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
So are you going to say the same thing about a baby in the womb, that it's just a reaction?
No, because that's a human. It's different.
So what? It's pain. I mean, I prick an animal.
Right,
he feels pain.
He has a reaction, right? So when a human does it, a human has a conscious interaction that makes pain, right? So let's say I poke
Okay.
Stop.
Okay. So let me just contend that. Where does consciousness come from?
Right. No. So I poke a single-celled organism. It doesn't even have any pain receptors, but it moves away from it, right? Because it's a reaction. You can apply this on a macro scale, right? So why do humans have consciousness? God gave us consciousness.
At what point did he give us consciousness?
At the time that he gave us the genetic mutation and biological product of humanity to go, well, now you are my being.
Now you're talking about direct creation right there. If you're just saying it's because remember evolution, again, we're talking about macroevolution, which is an accidental process, right?
No,
An unguided process.
It's not unguided.
So you're saying it's a guided process, though.
Yeah.
So your version of evolution is a guided process by God, which by the way, yes, that's what people that are both believe in God and believe in evolution do believe that. Yeah.
Right. So you agree that is a fundamental thing to believe in, right?
No, I'm saying it's necessary for your belief system. I'm not saying there's any basis behind it. I'm just saying that people believe it.
So for you to believe what you believe, you necessarily have to disagree with hundreds of years of evidence to disprove the idea that the Earth is 6,000 years old. You have to completely put blinders on and go, no, I do not see.
No, because there is a vast amount of scientific evidence that shows the Earth is actually young.
No, there's none.
Yes, there absolutely is.
There's zero.
There absolutely is. Go watch Frank Turek and the other scientists, the Answers in Genesis with Ken Ham, etc. There is evidence.
Ken Ham is probably the worst.
Okay, so again, let me come back to this though. Okay, why is man special? You're saying there is some point in evolution where God said, that's it, right there.
No, God.
Yes, that's what you just said. No, you said when God instilled.
No, I said God had a guided plan of evolution, right? God said, all right, so I created the Earth. I'm going to leave it alone. I have natural selection, and I have all of these genetic mutations that will lead to humans. He does not have to intervene at any point in time.
Why humans, though? First of all, why would he do that? Why wouldn't he just create humans? But why would, again, let me get back to the morality question, okay? An animal kills another animal, he's not morally responsible. A human kills an animal, he's not morally responsible. A human kills a human, he is morally responsible. Where does that come from? What's the basis of that?
It's God. He creates morality.
Where?
God creates morality.
Where do you get that from, though?
God.
Where does he say that? How do you know?
He's a transcendent moral.
But how do I know? I mean, you're just saying that. You're not providing evidence. I just want like a sentence or something.
I could explain the C.S. Lewis apologetics for morality.
Well, I've already argued that, but that's a basis in God created man directly.
No.
God exists, and God. What makes man special, right? That's just saying. C.S. Lewis says evil exists, therefore good exists. These require a moral. This means moral laws exist. A moral law requires a moral lawgiver, right?
Yeah.
You'd mentioned prescriptive. Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything with humans.
Yes, it does.
That's just only humans say that these exist. And so that proves, yes, in a long argument, we can say that proves that God is required for morality. I absolutely have already argued on that a couple times, right? Objective truth, things like that. But what I'm getting here is that the gospel, why did Jesus become a man? Why didn't he become an ape and save the apes? He came down as a man at a specific point in time to save mankind, right?
Because God created man specifically to be the bearer of his likeness.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. God created man.
Right.
Why would God create a little one-celled animal to bear his likeness? Does that make sense that God's going to create one-celled animal to bear his likeness? I don't think so.
I don't know what that has to do with this.
That's evolution. You're saying that God created a one-celled creature and provided this process that one cell would eventually turn into man, right?
Yeah.
So that seems to contradict yourself there. At least that's what I'm understanding.
No. So the contradiction of claims here would be that you believe that God popped something into existence without something being there before.
Are you saying that God cannot possibly do that?
No.
That's what your evolutionary process says in and of itself.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it says God. I mean, where did the earth and all this stuff come from?
It came from God.
Okay, then
Hold on.
We're both saying God created something out of nothing, right?
No. So God spoke things into existence. There was already things there, but they did not exist.
Where did they come from, though?
I don't know. It doesn't tell me. There's no reason to expect that there was something.
It tells you right here. It says all things that were created by God. God created in Genesis 1, ex nihilo, out of nothing. You can go again, going to John, Colossians, right? Paul in the New Testament, it says God created things out of nothing, ex nihilo.
Right. So
he created man. The first man was Adam.
There's a reason why the Gnostic verses and why Irenaeus put a lot of work into attacking the Gnostic verses, and that's specifically because they go against the idea that there was nothing in the universe, right? So the oldest foundation of Christianity outside of the Catholic Church is the Gnostic Church. And in the Gnostic Church, they disagreed with that, and they disagree with that from a Jewish.
Well, no, the oldest, because I mean, you have Paul, right? Paul is long before the Catholic Church
Paul created
or the
Catholic
Gnostic
Church.
churches.
No, Paul created
The Catholic Church was 300. That was under Constantine.
No, that's
We're at 5
the
seconds left.
formulation of the Catholic Church, but it was the Catholic Church.
No,